So I knew I wanted a board from early years, and I made many attempts on doing it my own, and then I brought in an organization to help me, and that was we started that in 2015, and the board is still running today.
So you built a. Where did the idea of the board actually come from? That was from your. Was that actually from the mentor, or was that
No,
idea before
it
that?
was.
Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you are in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is
Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the three pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Today's guest is Matt Chitwood, the second generation principal of Pivium. Pivium is a nationwide full-service design and integration firm creating human-centered audio-visual experiences since 1991. Their philosophy, design eats technology for breakfast. Design should always come first, with technology enhancing the human experience. Pivium partners with architects and facility owners to design, implement, and manage AV solutions that truly serve the people using the space. Matt is carrying forward the legacy from his father while also driving innovation for the next generation. He brings a unique perspective on how AV and design can transform environments across industries, from hospitality to healthcare to commercial spaces. And with all that said, Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, yeah, good to be here, guys. Really good to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about how you got into the business, how that all, maybe you were groomed from a young child with dad and saying like, you're
Right.
always going to be in the AV business and that's it. And then tell us about Pivium.
Yeah, it was none of the sorts. It really wasn't. This wasn't on my bingo card. This wasn't on my dad's bingo card. It wasn't on my mom's. Like a lot of people in the AV industry, I fell into it. Most people don't talk in first grade about wanting to grow up and be in the AV business. Most people don't go to college to study AV because there's very few places you can. Most people start somewhere else and then just sort of fall into it. Our industry too is made up of a lot of like former musicians, which I'm not. I wish I was, but the industry was built by these musicians in the 80s that just realized they had some technical skills to connect some equipment, and a lot of those people are going away. But no, I started out right out of college into the low voltage space.
Okay.
I worked for essentially an integration firm that put student ID card systems into college campuses. So I traveled to colleges and universities every week from Sunday to Friday, installing these systems, learn the low voltage trade, learn how to wire, learn about topology, basics of electricity, all that kind of stuff, and learned the trade pretty good. And then, my dad had been running this little tiny business for a number of years, and I was kind of at a crossroads in my career where I needed to make a choice. I had a young daughter at the time, and if I was going to, I felt like, at least from my perspective, if I was going to advance within that business, in this company, it's called Blackboard, I would need to move back east to headquarters, and I didn't want to do that. At the same time, my dad had this essentially an integration business, designing and installing television systems into hospitals and dialysis facilities. And it had it had gotten some legs. It had grown a little bit bigger than he essentially wanted it. It was this little sort of side bedroom business to bridge between his career and retirement. And he was looking at selling it. And I was like, well, why don't we take a shot at doing something together? I've got some ideas. You got this little thing started. Let's see what we can do together. And so I jumped in.
That's that's fun. That's actually unique because that wasn't the plan, right? Like this was, as you said, like it wasn't on the bingo card, right? And then, hey, Dad, you're an entrepreneur. You got this going already. I have this background in low voltage. Let's see what magic we can create. So what did that then look like? So you say, hey, let's go do this. You come back home is however you want to phrase that.
Kinda,
What did that look like? How did working with Dad go in the beginning stages?
It was this business was tiny. I'm talking like most of the operation was out of the spare bedroom of their home. Mm-hmm. And essentially it was my mom and my dad and my sister's kind of boyfriend, friend, guy, who still works for me, by the way. And then he had brought a guy in to kind of manage their warehouse. They got a little tiny warehouse space over at 7th Avenue in Deer Valley.
Okay.
So they could store TVs, because at the time, like the majority of what they were selling was 27-inch CRT televisions. So these things were in big boxes. They weighed 65, 70 pounds.
Yeah.
UPS driver hated pulling up to the back of that warehouse because we'd be sent, 20 of those things out at the time. They took up a lot of space. They're heavy.
Oh yeah.
So, it was really, really basic. So we had this spare bedroom of the home in this warehouse. So I showed up, and I think I probably worked for about 6 months, 9 months, maybe a year out of that little warehouse. We had a front area that was like concrete floor, very, very basic. There was one computer in the business that essentially ran QuickBooks and some word processing and Excel, which we did all of our purchase orders, like all like really, really basic stuff. I jumped in. I'm like, okay, everybody needs a computer. And this is back in 2005, So, we've come a long way in 20 years, just generally speaking in business and computing. Everybody needs a computer. Here's some things we got to do. We got to standardize our processes, standardize how we're doing things. Not everybody has to have all their hands in everything all the time. Let's sort of specialize some of our roles, like these kinds of things that just kind of one foot in front of the other. And, it was generally speaking, my dad and my mom, she was really the supporting cast. It was my dad's thing. He really gave me autonomy to do what I wanted to do in the business. I think he saw the potential. He saw some potential in me. I had recently come out of graduate school, so maybe I knew something I had to put into the real world, test myself at least. And he gave me a little bit of rope, and he did a really good job of that too. And I can share a little bit more about that down the road. But this was like his thing. Like, he was the entrepreneur. He was the guy who had been selling TVs. Most of his professional career was selling televisions for RCA.
Okay.
Old brand.
Oh yeah.
And this was his thing. So like everything that I changed in the business was something that at the time, a year before, or 3 or 4 years before, was the right thing for him to do when it was this little 2-3 man operation. Mm-hmm. But he gave me that ability to do that. And he did a pretty good job of kind of staying distant as I made some changes. And then he, his plan, his ultimate plan, because, I was right on the doorstep of him selling the business and getting the heck out of there. I mean, he ultimately wanted to go play more golf. And so one of the things that he did early on was I mean, this is after maybe 6, 9 months I had been around and we had worked together and I knew how things kind of operated. As he said, okay, now I'm going to take a day off every week. And it's going to be the same day for the most part. And then that'll give you a day where I'm not around. And you can do the things you want to do, keep on doing the things you want to do. That will just give you sort of like gradually taking off the training wheels.
Yeah.
This is super smart. I am so in love with that concept of like just stepping out but you know the day. So whether shit is hitting the fan or things are all smooth, right? But it gives you a day in the week where you just know that any decision that's being made, it's on you. That is so smart.
It was pretty wise. It really was. And then, year 2 days. And then year 3, and then gradually that's effectively how he worked himself out of the operation. Yeah.
That's smart. Obviously the transition to you, right? That makes tons of sense. Hey, but that's probably just smart for an owner in general that wants to be able to be out of the business and just be an owner, right? Like even if he wanted to say, hey, I just want to still be an owner. I want you to run it. And, I'll give you X amount of equity or whatever that setup becomes. Like, that's just a genius idea by him, just in total for any owner that like, hey, remove yourself from the business so then you can focus on other stuff, either going fishing or starting another business, because many entrepreneurs feel like the need to do something else with their time. But that makes tons of sense.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? It really is. I've actually told a lot of business owners that thing, because it's the hardest thing to do. When you're the guy, it's hard to peel yourself away, and that's hard. I think that's probably one of the reasons why a lot of businesses do fail a generational transition is you've got the one that started it all that had some really, really good ideas originally, but hasn't essentially been able to change them much in a lot of cases over time. And then you've got somebody new stepping in, whether it's within the family or outside the family. And then yet you still got this other person breathing down your neck all day long about what you should do and how you should be doing it. So yeah, I think it was a great idea.
Yeah. It's super smart. So, how do you get people to make decisions, or how do you get people to deal with the issues that come up? Well, you got to give them the opportunity to do it. And, a day a week is just a simple, I say simple in structure to say, like, I'm going to make you, deal with whatever happens that day, compared to these are the issues I want to try to send down to you, kind of a thing. So that's awesome.
Do you remember any of the early decisions that you made? Like, okay, now it's on me. And did you ever doubt yourself when it was just like one day a week, or when did it start feeling more like, oh, I don't have as much of a safety net, right? When you're making decisions, did you ever have those type of feelings? And if so, can you recall like any stories around that?
One of the first big decisions that he essentially gave me the final decision on was relocating our business property. So we had that small little warehouse, which is right around the corner, and then we had talked about like moving the entire operation into a building. And so we went out and we looked. I was living in a different area of town at the time, and so I was looking at buying a building in that area of town. I was looking in a bunch of different areas, and when I finally settled on ultimately where we're located here now, that was pretty big, because I thought, okay, this is putting kind of a stake in the ground. We're taking we're investing a lot of money in a condo, a shell, essentially. It was brand new, and we had to build it out and figure that all out. And I had never done that before. And I thought, well, I'm not sure, like, how much space do we need for the office versus the warehouse? How many, like, all those kinds of things. were pretty big decisions for me at the time. So that was one thing that essentially was probably one of those decisions early on I made on my own. After that, I started making some personnel decisions that he let me make. We needed to bring some additional people in to add to the operation, and that was, oddly enough, that was a place where he gave me the autonomy, and I made the choices, and then he always let me know after that I was spending a little too much on payroll. And in fact, he passed away a year ago, and even till the later, the later days, he would still ask me about my, how much. Tell me about your payroll. I think you're still probably spending too much. That was just always the thing. I think he just was always very, very sensitive around that. Probably came from some other experience that he had within probably RCA when he was a division manager, that he was just really, really sensitive about. That was always one of those things.
Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah.
How was it? So you're building new processes, right? You come in, you say, hey, like, we should do things differently. How do you balance that, honoring essentially what has worked, right? Like what has gotten to this point, to then either changing that and saying like, what got us here won't get us there, but then also like, let's not lose the soul of the business essentially. How is it balancing those like changing of processes? And then obviously for anybody that's in the business, and as you grow, it's like, well, now it affects more people than just mom, dad, sister, and the friend.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably more. I mean, looking back and thinking about it, I probably, as much as I'd like to think I was sensitive about my approach in which I was communicating what we were doing, how we were doing it, why we were doing it, I was probably more of a bulldog than I would have liked to have been. But then again, when you're making changes like that need to be done, and you have a pretty old school mentality about how things are done, why we do them, a lot of handwritten paperwork on yellow ledgers, like a lot of that type of accounting and record keeping and things like that. And man, like, sometimes it's like, we're just not doing that anymore. And I don't know what to tell you, except for like, people aren't doing that anymore. Like, and we're behind the times kind of thing. And, I had to be careful depending on the role. If it was my mom or my sister, I had to be more sensitive around those roles, the family roles, because at the end of the day, they're still my family. The team, as we started to build the team gradually, I think understood that a little bit more, and they were probably more interested in going, yeah, let's make the change, let's do this, let's operationalize these things, let's get into some software, let's do all those kinds of things. So it's a little bit of kind of consensus building with the group, but maybe helping, using my, in a sense, it's an age thing, like some of my younger crew here, to encourage some of these that have been around a little longer, that are a little bit more set in their ways and how things have always been done, to kind of just push that along.
Yeah, that's actually super interesting. An age component. You do business at a certain time, and then there are certain ideas that work at that time. But as you've gone through the business, now you are older than you were when that was happening. How do you keep on top of making sure that you don't fall into that same "this is how we do it" trap?
And this is how we've always done it trap.
Yeah, this is how we've always done it. That's why we do it this way.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Yeah, man, a lot of that comes down to, I really think the name of the game for me, and like I would highly encourage other business owners or people that are in management to think about this. I think the name of the game there is delegation, and how you delegate things to those that are working for you or around you or with you, depending on the makeup. It could be within a team, it could be within a company structure, whatever it is. I think it's all about delegation, because when you're delegating something to somebody, you're entrusting them to make the best decision. And if you've got the right people that are on the team, you got the A players that you trust with what they're doing, then you've got to think that they've got the best interest of the business in mind. And if they don't, and you figure that out over time, then you have to make a switch. But I have to delegate those things and those changes and the ability to evaluate how we're doing business to them, and then effectively turn my head and trust to them that they're doing it and making those changes. And I have seen myself get a little bit back too close to the bubble and I feel myself in the weeds, and I've got my strong opinions about things, and I just got to go. I got to turn my head. I got to, essentially step out for a day, to compared to what my dad did, and stay away and let that happen.
Oh, that's actually a really good thought, that connecting it full circle of saying,
Yeah.
I have now delegated. I have done the same, even though I'm not leaving the business, but
Sure.
I've done the same. So now I need to take this step out.
Yeah.
Last night I was at an event for State 48, and the president of Four Peaks Brewing was there, and he was talking about this specifically, of saying, like, you have to be okay with somebody else making a decision, even if it's not in his case, if it's not the product or, pitch to the beer of what, he would go for, because you have to let that happen. Otherwise you'll never get to do the next thing and the next thing. And as you think about, growing a business, you have to focus on that, not on the day to day. What did that install look like? Or, why did we go after this particular company? It's like, you got to think of it bigger picture.
Yeah, definitely do. And you know what? Sometimes things are done. I've got a little head shake, or I got to bite my tongue or whatever, and that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
I guess when we're talking about delegation, do you have sort of a rule set or a litmus test that you use to sort of, because there are some decisions, like, you can give to an employee, but they could change the direction of where the company is going, right? And typically that would be in a leadership position, right? So there is sort of that, we'll call it accountability authority balance, right? If you're giving someone the authority to make that decision, there's also the keeping them accountable to whatever that decision is. How do you do that? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, it's a process, and by process I mean I've got structure in place with my leadership, who I'm talking to constantly, on a weekly basis. We're reviewing the things that have happened in the past week, the things that are happening in the week to come. We're looking at measurements, we're looking at metrics. There are things that we're just constantly checking on, the small litmus tests, if you will. And, I think it's just you kind of, over time with your people, kind of like a team that's like a sports team, to make that comparison, that knows that when they go on that field, they've got to trust the person that's going to catch the ball, run the play, do whatever it is they're doing. But there's there's also behind that, and it lags a little bit, that gel that comes together when you feel, and you, even though you've always trusted that person, now you're so well connected that you almost know what they're going to do before they do it, kind of thing. And I think that's an important place to get to with those that you're entrusting to make decisions for you. And it doesn't come right out of the gate. It takes some time to build that. But so that you can then, then when you're in a conversation and something doesn't seem right, or you feel like maybe you need to ask a question a different way, you have the ability to do that because you know that person so well. So it's not it's a little bit of structure, and it's a little bit of art, in a sense, to really, really know the people that you've trusted with you making your leadership decisions.
That is it's a good way to kind of break that down. Do you have any stories around someone that you've been trusted with, you felt like you've gelled, but they surprised you with the decision?
Ooh.
Good or bad, right?
Good or bad, yeah. Surprises can go either way. I should have said that it can go either way. Yes.
Yes, it could be I would not have thought to do that, but wow, did that work?
Yeah. A big one's not coming to mind. I've gotten to with the woman that runs my organization right now as my president. Over the years, I've figured out that when we're hiring people, we see things from a completely different perspective. And so her and I are both involved anytime we hire somebody, although sometimes and occasionally it depends on where the individual's coming from. Sometimes it comes from me. I've gotten to know somebody in the industry or whatever. Sometimes it comes from a recruiter or whatever and kind of feeds up in my direction. But her and I both spend time with the candidate, and we ask things from a different perspective, and then we get together and talk through these kind of different perspectives. And so that's just one way that we've kind of looked at things a little bit differently. It doesn't completely answer the question. I'm trying to think of if there's been something like that's been significant in the business that there has to have been. Nothing's jumping out at me at the moment, though.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
And maybe that is a good sign, right? That when you've gelled enough, you just understand the decision-making tree or framework that they're going through, in that it's similar to what you would have gone through, right?
Sure.
Which can be really positive results, right? You're replicating a portion of yourself, in the business, or at least you understand that everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
So then, did that come from your dad as well, where he replicated, essentially you are a replica of a portion of him, not necessarily just in DNA. I'm talking about like the actual thinking process.
A little bit, and it's more personality.
Okay.
And it's one of those things I've come to recognize over the years. He was always a shoot first and then think about it after the fact kind of approach to things.
Okay.
Just in general, I mean, like all kinds of things. We had some kind of reflection around that after he passed away, because he would just do something and then go, oh, well, I forgot about this. I didn't think about this. But he'd always figure it out because he just kind of had that kind of way about him. My approach to decisions is start thinking about it, analyze it, put it over to the side for a little bit, come back to it in a few weeks, think it through a little bit more, maybe bounce it off a person, analyze it some more. Like and that's something I've had to work on over the years is being better about being quicker about making decisions. So we had two different approaches there in our perspectives, which definitely gave us our fair share of little conflicts in the early years. But that was that definitely was one of those things that was probably the hardest thing for us. But the thing about my personality now, I'm kind of recognizing that I don't know if it's one of those sort of DNA things or what, but I have like the patience of an ant. and if I get frustrated about things, and then it's kind of like I get backed into a corner. And over the years, we've done lots of personality testing and kind of recognize it. Like under pressure, I get very, very not necessarily aggressive, but I'm very, very quick to jump onto things. That's good in some sense, but I've got to be really, really careful about that too, because then I can easily say something that I regret, or I make a decision that I regret. So I gotta know when that's coming, and be very, very careful about how I use that superpower.
Yeah, it sounds like your dad fit the say more traditional entrepreneur role, where it's like, jump off the cliff and build the plane on the way down. Where you were like, no, we're gonna design the plane. I'm gonna put it through engineering. I'm gonna then have some consultants come in, and then I'm gonna get it actually built, and then we're gonna take off. Compared to like just jump and go, which is then interesting for the patience part, because like, well, if you don't have a lot of patience, how can you do all these things, right?
Yep.
But that's the beauty of humans and how we are. How do you deal with that in regards to leadership, though? Because like inherently, as a leader, you are trying to be calm and cool and collective, because like, hey, I have to make sure everybody is doing the right thing, but then also is in an environment that's calm and clean and all that. So how do you manage that thing that about yourself, right? Knowing is a huge component to this, but then also not letting it show so much to everybody else on the team.
Yeah. I mean, it really comes down to situational awareness and just knowing myself and feeling when I'm getting into I what I'll do is if I sense that I'm getting to a point where I'm frustrated about something and I want to say something, I'll vent to somebody that I know I can vent to, and just vent. If it's in person, or maybe it's something in a kind of a virtual environment, and I'll send a message and just sort of kind of dissipates a little bit of the frustration.
Okay.
And also too, we've done some personality testing within the organization, so we all know each other's strengths and how each other is wired, and so that's another thing too. It's just always being sensitive to who we're communicating with and how they're going to receive something, because it's not necessarily going to be received how I would receive it. So that's a kind of perspective. We did a lot of work early on with DISC. And so we're all very, very keenly aware of how each of us is wired. And so at the end of the day, it's just being aware of that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You'd mentioned having a place to vent. One big unique about you or the business is you have a board. Is that a place to vent, or is that's not the right place to have that happen?
Oh, no. Yeah, no, it definitely is. Yeah, I've vented to the board over the years. I vent to them one-on-one occasionally about various things. There's some things I've been venting to them for a little while about, and then we have a conversation about that and why I've been venting with them for a little while or a long while, depending on the thing. But Yeah, the board has been a wonderful backstop. That whole idea. A mentor of mine from some time ago used to talk about um, um, jet airplanes not having rearview mirrors, and so you can't see necessarily like the stuff that's around you when you're trucking along and you got your head down. And so my original intent was just to build an advisory board around my business to help me see my blind spots, because I knew I was going to have them. I knew I wasn't going to know everything. And I'd much rather take the advice of somebody that's been through something and done something and just do it on my own. And it's a more expensive mistake. And so I knew I wanted a board from early years. And I made many, many attempts on doing it on my own. And then I brought in an organization to help me. And that was we started that in 2015, and the board is still running today.
So you where did the idea of the board actually come from? That was was that actually from the mentor, or was that idea before that?
It wasn't. Years ago, one of our manufacturing partners in Dayton, Ohio, a company called PDI Communication Systems, they were just trying to make sure that their sales channel, the company selling their products, were strong, and they were thinking about building their businesses, because there are a lot of small businesses like mine, that entrepreneurs that that they do their thing and then they do it, and then next thing you know, they wake up and they're 70 years old and they're going, "What am I doing? I never thought about transitioning my business or building structure and all those kinds of things." And so there's an organization in Northern Ohio called Aileron, just up the road from PDI. And they paid for me to go out to a course called the Course for Presidents. Essentially, it's thinking about getting out of your business and thinking about building your business. And it gets you out to this really, really beautiful facility for several days, and they bring in some great, really, really smart people to help people that are leading their businesses. And it gave me some ideas. And along the way, they talked about the concept of an advisory board. And so that kind of planted the seed. I was thinking about that a bit. And then I went back a little while later, I don't know, 6 months or a year later, and I went to another course there called how to build a board. And this organization, Aileron, was founded by a guy named Clay Mathiel, who was the founder of EM's Pet Food. And he had some really, really great advice around and some really great statistics around companies that have boards versus that don't, and the failure rate of businesses that have boards that don't. And that struck really, really hard to me. And it was in the early years of the transition of the business, of the ownership transition of the business. And I thought, man, I gotta do this. And so I made a couple attempts on my own, and then I found a great organization called Board Developer that helped me actually do it. That helped me go out and find awesome candidates, manage the board, and do all that kind of stuff. And it's been a wonderful ride.
Since you went through a course, and this is very unique, so building a board, what is it that someone that's looking to even potentially build a board or thinking about this, what should they be thinking about when building a board? How does one go about it, right?
Yeah.
Just a little bit about those experiences in building a board.
I'm going to start out with one of the things that it's very, very common that I would highly suggest that owners and leaders are careful about, is not bringing in somebody that's too close to the business, that's a friend or a manufacturer or somebody like that. You need some really, really good objective advice. So that's kind of a filter to run everything through. And then I would assess strengths of the owner or the leadership team or whoever is going down this path. where do your experiences lie? What have you done in the past? For me, I've never been a numbers person. I just not one of those things that came naturally to me. In undergrad and grad school, I had to work really, really hard in accounting and finance and econ. It was always a grind. And so I knew I needed somebody that had a numbers mentality. I wanted somebody that ideally came from an accounting background or a financial leadership position. So I knew I needed that. I also knew that sort of thinking about my business. Okay, who are the people that are out there that are have something that I need that I don't necessarily have in part of my team. And in our world of design and integration, architecture's a big thing. One of my passions early in my from the early years in high school, I secretly wanted to be an architect. In fact, I applied to a couple schools for their architecture program, ASU and Clemson being two of them, along with where I ended up going, which was Indiana. And I knew that if I got into Indiana, I was going to go there anyway. It was kind of a family thing. It was part of my DNA. It was easy, but so I didn't go the architecture route. But I really have always been intrigued by architecture, and it's really critical to our business. And so I knew I wanted an architect on the board. And early on too, although I had done a whole lot of work in the low voltage space as a contractor, very little of my work had ever been with like construction projects in process. And so I knew that I needed somebody to help advise me on the whole process of building the built environment. And so I wanted a contractor on my board. And then also too, early on when I built the board, our business was 100% in healthcare. And so I wanted somewhere from the healthcare space. And I looked at lots of different kinds of roles. I ended up with a physician who was also in a leadership role with a large healthcare organization locally. So from my standpoint, like those were things that were just like things about my business that I knew that I couldn't bring anything to the table in those areas. And so therefore I wanted somebody that was going to have some level of subject matter expertise to just help me through those things. I ended up bringing early on an operations person from an airline on too that was wonderful because he had a really good operations mindset. So as we were building the team in the early years and part of the building of the team was also like we had some roles early on, some people that had crept into the business before we were really discerning about how we were hiring people. And so some of this was transition, like, getting some people off the team and bringing some people in to fill those seats. And so that operational advice was really helpful early on. So it was just kind of an assessment of like leadership strengths and weaknesses, and then also kind of the things that we needed in the business too, and some people that could really advise us in those areas.
Were there any instances that you can think of where going either tough situations or where when you went to the board, they essentially gave you an answer that was tough to hear, but after you had your pity party, if you will, you went with that decision?
Gosh, oh my gosh, and it makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Like I will never ever forget. There's two things. I'll never ever forget my first meeting ever. I walked in there, and I had spent time with these people. We had meals together and all, and throughout the process of kind of courting these board members and things like that. And they knew lots about the business and me and everything and what I was looking to do. But I came in with my agenda, and then I just got like absolutely picked apart. Absolutely picked apart. Now, granted, this is an advisory board, and the way my board is structured, I don't pay my board members. Some do. I just decided that's not how I'm going to operate my board, and then they can't fire me. But I always knew that I would treat their advice as if they could fire me. And that's the kind of relationship I wanted. I wanted that. And I made that very, very clear to them too. Like, I want your most objective, hard, constructive criticism that you can possibly give me. And that meeting, I went in with all my great ideas about things I wanted to do with the business. And they essentially told me, that's great. We're going to put that over here for 2 or 3 years down the road. Here are all the other things you need to start working on. It was a tough pill to swallow. It was everything I asked for, but it was a tough pill to swallow. A lot of them structurally, financially, like things we needed to do, like there's a lot of that. But man, that was brutal.
You were probably thinking, what did I get myself into? This is
oh man. It was gnarly. It really, really was. I still, every once in a while, we'll kind of revisit that, because I still have two of my original board members, and we'll talk about those early days. Man, it was tough. And I still, like, this. The second part of that is, for the first couple of years, I would leave those meetings absolutely, like, totally expended, like completely wasted, tired, just depleted. I would literally go outside. There's a few of them we had at a restaurant in Old Town Scottsdale, and I go out and just sit on this bench and just unwind and just try to write down as many things as I possibly could. I mean, I took a lot of notes in the meeting, but just write down as many things I could about, like, just things that were on my mind, because I didn't want them to kind of like dissipate from my brain and my, like, kind of unwinding of the day. Oh, it was crazy. And I still, after our meetings now, I still feel similarly, but those early years, man, it was brutal.
It sounds like there were a lot of operational related things that they were picking you apart about, rather than whatever your new ideas. Obviously, there was the people side, the process side. They probably were picking apart. Anything on the technology side as well that they were picking apart, or was that where your ideas were?
Yeah, like by technology, you mean like internal systems?
Internal systems, or broadly, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of that, because early on we knew, and we actually went through a period where when I started the board, we were using both QuickBooks, it's our accounting, I hardly call it an ERP, and Salesforce as our CRM, and we had some middleware that linked the two, so that we could share data between them. And for whatever reason, the way that interface worked, I don't remember. I remember this occasion vividly. I just knew that the person at the QuickBooks customer support out of Tucson said to me, the way that the interface hits the database, it does something, and it does something to your file that essentially makes it a really, really good candidate for corruption. And in 2017, I think, our database got corrupted, and our QuickBooks effectively came to a grinding halt.
Oh, jeez.
And that was painful. And we were down for a few days. We brought it back up. We had to start a brand new data file. And then we were living out of 2 data files. So up until this date out of this data file and so on and so forth. And they said, okay, like the way you can prevent this in the future is by doing this maintenance on a regular basis. And so we did that maintenance for a few years. A few.
That sounds so painful.
Yeah, I'll get back to that.
That sounds
story.
unbelievably painful. Wow.
Yeah, we went through an accounting system crash. And so at the time we were talking about, and we knew that we were eventually going to grow out of QuickBooks. We needed something, because we're effectively, we're in design and construction. So we needed something that we were going to be able to tailor to our needs. And so we had a lot of conversation about when that would be and how to do that and how to budget the dollars for that. And unfortunately, we never got to it until it was too late again, which came a couple of years ago. But that's maybe for another story for another time, because we did have another database corruption issue that forced us into adoption of a new accounting platform, and that's when we switched.
So maybe learning lesson for those that are out there. What are for anyone that wants to learn from this, what would be the advice that you would give them for either how to prevent the problem or how to quote unquote see the problem before it actually becomes like a legitimate issue, like a business stopping issue?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like one of those business continuity assessments. Like, what are the things that would disrupt your business, interrupt your continuity for a day at a minute, ideally a day, but sometimes, these things are several days. And that goes into backups and maintenance and those sorts of things. Like, do as much as you can and back that stuff up religiously, because that's your lifeblood. And that's going to help you with an IT issue, and that's going to potentially help you down the road if you have some sort of cybersecurity.
Yeah. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we do those all the time. So technology risk assessments. There's a few different types, right? So cybersecurity is a risk assessment. In the same way that you would, like, if you had someone that was doing your books, you would still have a third party that would be auditing those books. Usually it's a CPA that's auditing, let's say, your internal accounting. Cyber risk assessments, right? Internal, external. Yeah. Those are also common. And then the business continuity risk assessment, right? IT. Those are all different pieces to having risk around your technology. So so doing risk assessments, and for small business owners, sometimes the concept of risk management is not in their vocabulary. That is something that larger companies, that is like something that's talked about daily and weekly, versus small business.
Guys see that? I mean, you see the bad side of it all the time, probably, because you going, what do I do?
Yep.
Or the ignorance of it, of not realizing that how much risk they are putting on themselves, and it's not an if, it's a when type of situation. Mm-hmm. You are now in the place of, you're hoping your way through. You're going to get to whatever that next leap is, and you're not going to get there.
Yeah, right.
We see it all the time. Yeah.
Right.
So, and I'd say for most companies, those risk assessments is extraordinarily eye-opening, because it's a total Pandora's box. But I think the way to leverage risk assessments is this becomes your roadmap of the actual problems you need to be solving, right? Like,
sure.
These are your high-level risks. These need to be budgeted for or attacked, and these are lower risk. Deal with those down the road, or not deal with them, right? Defer them.
Yeah.
So, Justin, I think it's time for our last question.
I agree.
Got anything else? Yeah, I think it's time for our last question. So on that note, take it away.
All right. Well, we like to ask everybody this question at the end of our episodes. So Matt, if you could go back 20 years, 2005, quite the year for you. What advice would you give yourself in 2005 if you go back in time?
Oh man, going back in time. Um, if I were to, one of the things that I think, it was really, really, really important about our business that was important about our business at the time. Like when we started out, when I started out, we were a national integration supporter for the healthcare space, and almost all of our clients were national healthcare clients. We had a big rehab client. We had a few regional acute care IDNs, like hospital chains, kind of thing. We had a large dialysis customer, and our perspective was always nationally, and therefore, but we were a business that operated out of Phoenix, Arizona. We had a lot of clients locally here in Phoenix. But I didn't spend a lot of time in the local business community building relationships and getting to know the who's who. I had a really, 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 really good, strong social, personal network. I lived here. I moved here in 1995, so I've been here for a while. I had a lot of really, really good relationships there, but I had never really plugged myself into the local business community. And quite honestly, didn't really start doing that until we renamed and repositioned the company in 2019. And I regret that. I regret not getting more of a head start on that. So if I were to talk to my 20-year-ago self, my 30-some-year-old self, I would highly suggest getting really, really plugged into the local business community. Effectively digging the well before being thirsty, because I really look at, now our business, although we have clients and all across the country, much of it is really, really based locally here in Arizona. And I wish I had more of a head start on that.
That's really great advice. One, tactical, like I think just tacticality, great advice. But then also two, it's very big picture. It is, build or dig the well before you're thirsty is a great analogy there.
Yeah, those things. I don't care whether your clients are all. Even if my clients were all outside the state of Arizona, still those connections are really, really, really critical. You need people in your court. You need people that you can just grab a cup of coffee or beer and bounce ideas off with. You need to know who your competitors are. You need to know them personally too. These things are really, really critical to the success of a small business. And got a late start. I feel like I've made a lot of ground over the last several years and continue to do so, but live and learn.
All right. No, it's good advice. This has been a ton of fun. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Oh man, they could hit me up on LinkedIn. I think I'm Matt Chitwood, LinkedIn / Matt Chitwood. There are a few others out there, by the way, one of which my wife went to high school with, which is kind of funny.
That is very funny.
The exact same name as me. And I met him, and he's in our industry, by the way.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
He literally is in our industry. He's worked for a number of different manufacturers. I met him a few years ago at an industry event, one of those small world stories. But yeah, LinkedIn. You can hit us at our website, pivium.com, pivium.com. I can be reached at matt.chitwood@pivium.com, 2 T's in Matt, 1 T in Chitwood. It is Chitwood with a C and not Chitwood with an S. Happened before.
That's funny.
Yeah, lots of ways to get in touch with me. Yeah, I'd love to talk to anybody.
Yes, build the community, as you were just saying.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell the people before we say goodbye?
No. I just think It's been good to get to know both of you. It's been a lot of fun. I feel like I'm heading into this. I don't want to say golden years because I have no intention of getting out of this business anytime soon. But I feel like I'm heading into this period in our business where we're hitting a really good stride. I feel really good about a lot of things that we're doing, and I love what you guys are doing locally with in the AEC space.
Yep.
It's really awesome. There's companies that are like mine. I meet people all the time that small shops, some smaller than mine, some that are small that are bigger than mine, and I think everybody needs the continuous reinforcement of people that are going to pour into them and advise them, connect them with people, and be a good sounding board for just business in general. Because I tell you what, man, we don't need to be doing this stuff alone.
Yeah.
It's not for the faint of heart.
For sure.
You guys get that.
No, we are definitively better together. You build great things by doing it with others, for sure. So, listeners, this has been a ton of fun. Me and Will had a blast. Matt shared a ton of amazing nuggets, in my opinion. And until next time, adios.
Adios.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
Keep building scale.
Scale.